Hi guys, welcome to the third lecture in the series, and we're getting really close to Monash. That's really exciting. Today we're going to be talking a bit about public speaking and seeing how you can try and maybe improve your skills before conference. So we're going to start off with a couple of common issues that people have in public speaking. These may be things that you've experienced. I've certainly experienced a lot of these. Things like fear, blanking when you're nervous and just everything goes out of your mind, anxiety, lack of confidence or nervousness, having a lack of eye contact, although I guess that's not as much of an issue because everything's going to be online this time. Stuttering and saying is a big issue, and I'm sure if you've been watching some of my videos, you can definitely see that that's something that I suffer from as well. Having unmemorable speeches is something that definitely can be worked on. Not using time wisely, because obviously in conference you have a limited time when you're in caucus or in general speakers list. And the other issue is not being able to speak on the spot. But again, I think the online platform this year is going to really mitigate that issue, because you can really practice and even write out what you want to say before you have to say it, which can definitely help with that. The 3 key tips, if you don't take anything away from today, take these 3 things away. Keep trying, make sure you practice, and be courageous. Don't feel scared or embarrassed or nervous, because everybody's in the same boat. It's all a bit of fun, and just enjoy yourself. So, speaking during a Model UN conference, we're gonna just quickly watch a little bit of this fantastic speech. This is Sheryl Sandberg and her TED Talk on why we have too few women leaders.
So the question. Who had to go to the bathroom. So the question is, how are we going to fix this? How do we change these numbers at the top? How do we make this different? I want to start out by saying I talk about this, about keeping women in the workforce, because I really think that's the answer. In the high-income part of our workforce, in the people who end up at the top Fortune 500 CEO jobs or the equivalent in other industries, the problem that I am convinced is that women are dropping out. Now, people talk about this a lot, and they talk about things like flex time and mentoring and programs companies should have to train women. I want to talk about none of that today, even though that's all really important. Today, I want to focus on what we can do as individuals. What are the messages we need to tell ourselves? What are the messages we tell the women that work with and for us? What are the messages we tell our daughters?
Okay, so we're going to leave it at that. But what I really like about this speech, obviously we only watched like a couple seconds, but I like how she started off with a lot of rhetorical questions. I thought that was really interesting, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to discussing a good hook. And then she got straight to the point, and she structured her speech, like what she was going to talk about. She signposted really well. And so these are definitely things that you can also incorporate into your own speech. I'd really recommend watching this whole speech because I think it's really fantastic. But otherwise, we'll keep moving. Another great speech is this one. It's Margaret Thatcher's No, No, No. It's very old, but I think it's really interesting. And it's also great to see a female politician in a room full of men and, really taking the floor. I think that's great. And it really shows you that you just need to be bold and courageous. So moving on to Model UN etiquette. Here are some general rules. So just be formal in your tone and your vocabulary. It's not casual. It's not a casual conference. It's intended to replicate a proper model. It's intended to replicate a proper United Nations conference. So make sure your behavior reflects that. Also, begin your speeches by addressing the Honourable Chair and fellow delegates, just to show courtesy. No personal pronouns will be permitted, so don't use I believe, or I want. Always use we or the delegate from Germany believes that, blah, blah, blah. Or you can just say Germany believes, which is the country that you represent. I think the most common is probably B or C. Don't blatantly or ferociously attack other delegates. It's important to be kind, and it's also important to, find allies. So being mean to some other country isn't going to help you. Don't look angry during your speech. Make sure you're relaxed and calm and enjoying yourself. And you can end your speeches with expressions of appreciation or conciliation. So, for example, the delegate of Germany would really like to thank all the fellow delegates for listening to this speech, or for considering working with us to achieve peace. Speaking in Model UN is often very impromptu and quick because the general speakers lists move fast, the topics can move quite fast, and the amount of time that you have to speak in the debate is very short. Usually it'll be 60 to 90 seconds. So you need to be able to convey your country's stance and ideas all in that short amount of time. There's going to be lots and lots of speeches, and there's lots of delegates, so you need to try and think of how you can make your speech stand out. And the other speaking in Model UN is not debate, but rather negotiation, which is what we talked about last week. And that's where during the unmoderated caucuses, you get up, move around, talk to people, try and convince people to be on your side, to support your draft paper, working resolution. So this sort of speaking is also important, that it's also important for you to be impactful and, calm, conciliatory, and just friendly. So how do we structure a memorable speech? So even though it is impromptu, it's important that you do have a clear structure in your head of what you want to say. And this will make it easier for you to convey your ideas, but also easier for people to understand what you actually want to do. Signposting your speeches to make it clear is really important, so people know what key elements are in your speech. And today what we're going to talk about is the 3 elements that I think makes up the most simple kind of speech that you can really whip up in your head in 30 seconds. And it's something great to practice, which we'll get to later. So the first thing is the hook, which is an engaging way to capture your audience's attention. And some common hooks are a quote, statistic, stories, or a question or a rhetorical question, just like we saw in the Sheryl Sandberg speech. And this hook is really something to get people's attention from the first go, making it memorable. So here's an example: 263 million children, adolescents, and youth worldwide, or 1 in every 5, are out of school, a figure that has barely changed over the past 5 years. Right? Simple statistic, but you can say it in a way that makes it a little shocking, like, wow, we have to do something about it, and that can engage people. So that's the first thing to think about. The next is the point. What are you actually trying to say? So step 2 is really where the actual information is and the purpose of your speech. So it's important to put your point into this part, but also keeping it short and concise. Just focus on one thing. You don't need to put all your ideas out in one speech. You've got plenty of time to do that. So here's an example. The Republic of Korea believes that education is a human right and that all people should have access to education. So that's talking about what Korea's policy is and what they do believe in. Education is a pathway out of poverty for millions in developing countries, like Korea was just a few decades ago. Education is the driver of change and development in this world, and education is critical for the human race to continue to grow and thrive. So this basically sums up their point that they really care about education. They think everybody needs to have access to education and also the importance of education as they've experienced it. And step 3 is a call to action. So the final part of the speech should contain what you want people to do or what you want the other delegates to think. And this ultimately encapsulates your idea or solution. And this is very important because it's here that you often distinguish your ideas to another countries. Everybody might say, oh, I want everybody to have access to education. But it's at this point where we can work out how we want that to happen and what other people's ideas are in making that happen. And it can definitely help you get allies as you can work out who has similar ideas to you. So here's an example. To provide universal access to education, Korea proposes the creation of an international fund called Education for All to support 3 programs in developing countries: building more schools, training new teachers, and preventing girls from dropping out of school. We call upon the international community to create and donate to this fund to guarantee education as a universal right. So as you can see, this is their proposal to create a fund that's going to support these 3 programs. So it's very clear-cut, concise, and asks all the delegates to participate in their idea.